The afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled light over the park bench, where Aaron sat dressed in a simple yet elegant jacket, one that only subtly hinted at his immense wealth. He had come here to escape, to take a momentary reprieve from the relentless demands of his growing business empire. The park, tucked away in a quiet corner of Atlanta, had become his sanctuary, a rare place where no one knew his name or recognized the billionaire. Here, he could blend in, unnoticed and unbothered. As Aaron sipped his coffee, his eyes wandered to a group of children playing near a worn, graffiti-covered fountain. Their laughter echoed through the air as they chased each other around the cracked concrete. Their clothes were stained, their sneakers worn to the soles. They were carefree, their joy untainted by the burdens of adulthood. Aaron watched them for a long moment, feeling a pang of something unfamiliar in his chest, a tug that was impossible to ignore. He had walked through this park many times before, had seen people struggling, families on the brink, but today, something felt different. His gaze shifted to a boy sitting a little apart from the others, drawing shapes in the dirt with a stick. The boy looked about 15 or 16, his posture hunched, his face a mask of quiet focus. His clothes were worn and patched, his sneakers barely holding together, but there was something in the way he carried himself, a quiet strength that belied his years. And then Aaron saw it. The boy reached up to push back his short, coiled hair, and there it was, a small birthmark just below his ear. Aaron's chest tightened. It was an innocuous mark, one most wouldn't notice, but to Aaron it was unmistakable. His mind raced, memories flooding in unbidden. He thought of Maya, his college girlfriend. Their relationship had been a whirlwind, passionate, messy, and unforgettable. He remembered how she would laugh, her voice like music, how she would challenge him in ways no one else dared. But he also remembered the fights, the arguments, that left them both too wounded to keep going. They had broken up with the naive assumption that time would heal all wounds, that they might find their way back to each other. But time had a mind of its own. He hadn't seen her in over 16 years. Aaron rose from the bench before he even realized he was moving. He approached the boy, his heart pounding, unsure of what he was going to say, but unable to ignore the pull he felt. The boy looked up as Aaron stopped in front of him, startled by the sight of a stranger standing so close. His dark eyes, deep and piercing, met Aaron's, and for a moment, Aaron forgot how to speak. "Hey there," Aaron said finally, his voice uncharacteristically shaky. "Sorry to bother you, but can I ask your name?" The boy hesitated, his grip tightening on the stick in his hand. "Why?" he asked, his tone cautious. He glanced over at the other kids, but they were too absorbed in their game to notice. Aaron knelt slightly, trying to appear less imposing. He hesitated. "I saw your birthmark. Someone I used to know had one just like it." The boy's eyes narrowed, suspicion evident in his expression. "So, what's your name?" Aaron tried again, softer this time. "Elijah," the boy replied after a long pause, his voice low but steady. "Elijah," Aaron repeated, the name unfamiliar yet somehow feeling right. "It's a strong name." Elijah didn't respond, his eyes flickering back to the dirt at his feet. Aaron pressed on, his heart in his throat. "Your mom? What was her name?" At that, Elijah's head snapped up, his gaze sharpening. "Why do you care?" Aaron took a deep breath. Because I think I knew her." Elijah's expression hardened. "Her name was Maya," he said, his voice flat, almost defiant. Aaron's breath caught in his throat. He felt the world tilt beneath him, the coffee cup in his hand trembling. "Maya," he whispered, barely audible. He looked at Elijah again, really looked at him, and suddenly he saw her in the boy's face, the shape of his eyes, the curve of his cheekbones. "Maya, she was my girlfriend. A long time ago." Elijah's expression shifted, confusion clouding his features. "You knew my mom?" Aaron nodded, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "Yes, but I didn't know she had a son. I didn't know about you." Elijah shrugged, his face unreadable. "She didn't talk much about the past. She died when I was 10. Car accident." The words hit Aaron like a blow, the breath leaving his lungs in a rush. Maya was gone. He hadn't known. He hadn't been there. And now, her son, his son, was sitting here, living a life Aaron couldn't begin to fathom. "I'm so sorry," Aaron said, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't know. I would've." Elijah cut him off, his tone sharp. "You didn't know, so what? It doesn't matter now." She's gone. I've been on my own for a while. The matter-of-fact way Elijah said it broke something inside Aaron. He sat down on the edge of the fountain, trying to steady himself. Elijah, I think I'm your father. The boy's eyes widened, disbelief flashing across his face. What? Aaron held up his hands, desperate to explain. Your mom and I, we were together for a long time, but we broke up and I didn't know she was pregnant. If I had known, I swear I would have been there. Elijah stared at him, his expression a mix of anger, confusion, and something else Aaron couldn't quite place. You're saying you're my dad? Aaron nodded, his throat tight. Yes, I think so. For a long moment, Elijah didn't speak. Then his face hardened. If you are, where were you? Why weren't you there? Aaron's chest ached at the accusation, the pain in Elijah's voice cutting deeper than he thought possible. I didn't know, he said softly. If I had, I would have never left. I would have been there for you, for your mom. The silence that followed was heavy, the weight of years of absence hanging between them. Finally, Aaron reached out, placing a tentative hand on Elijah's shoulder. I'm here now, he said quietly, and I want to make this right. I want to get to know you, to be the father I should have been. Elijah didn't pull away, but he didn't respond either. He stared at the ground, his emotions swirling too quickly for him to grasp. Finally, he said, I don't know what you want from me. Aaron shook his head. I don't want anything from you. I just want to be here for you. Let me take you somewhere safe. Let me help. Elijah hesitated, his defenses warring with a part of him that wanted to believe. Slowly, he nodded. That evening, Aaron brought Elijah to his home, a sprawling loft in the heart of Atlanta. It was a world away from the streets Elijah had known. For the first time in years, Elijah slept in a bed, his own bed, in his own room. Aaron stood in the doorway, watching him sleep, his heart heavy with regret, but also full of a new sense of purpose. He had missed so much, but he wouldn't miss another moment. In the weeks that followed, Aaron took steps to formally adopt Elijah. The legal process was expedited thanks to his resources, but it was his commitment that truly drove things forward. He enrolled Elijah in a local school, hired tutors to help him catch up, and introduced him to a life of structure and support. Elijah, though wary at first, began to adapt. He excelled in art, his sketches revealing a talent Aaron hadn't expected. Slowly, the walls between them began to come down. Aaron didn't stop at providing the basics. He made it a point to spend time with Elijah, taking him to museums, basketball games, and even on trips out of state. They laughed together, argued occasionally, but with each passing day, they grew closer. Elijah began to see Aaron not just as a stranger, but as someone he could rely on. Years passed, and Elijah blossomed into a confident young man. Inspired by his past, he developed a passion for architecture, determined to create spaces that would provide shelter and dignity for those who needed it most. Aaron watched with pride as Elijah graduated high school, then college, and finally stood before an audience to accept his degree in urban design. As they walked out of the graduation ceremony, Aaron placed a hand on Elijah's shoulder. I'm proud of you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Elijah smiled, his eyes shining. Thanks, Dad, for everything. In that moment, Aaron knew they had both found something priceless, a bond that no amount of money could ever replace. Together, they had built something unshakable, a family, forged from resilience, love, and the power of second chances.